container ba yes ye wia na ye guso ka ho asem debate na po ho no ne energy minister Dubik wo ho no ye former ECG boss ye wo procurement director omunyina wo ho bepim ne ye da so toto papa so
and I was disappointed in Afenyo board chairman ese e wo ho da
na nka this time kwa I was saying ka Afenyo market ya che no enye e frɛ no ya che no because a board chairman say winning board system now corporate governance now we see you wontimi nya bibia without boss approval. My quick comment just 2 minutes patch on ECG.
Okay.
When him say ECG no the first masters me project thesis na on ECG. My topic no na the effect of performance, the effect of vision and mission on the performance of Ghanaian companies. Case study ECG. Into the nam person me share and they say on say a mission here mission of a company here the company ni gina ho say wo ye
nani suade huna
da mission here ebia
ni dwumadi
a wodie de enti a wote adwuma no
right
ehun adwuma no ye vision here wani suade hunu into nam person me share ECD adwuma ene o mani suade hunu enti wo ko ba bia ye fra bibi credo.
Right.
Credo CREDO. On say oba multimedia and now ko baby and near the bibia boho near cho vision near chro mission near chro core values. Enti okwa company now utimu say we no mugina ho okwa bank near cho so we are for this that good. Enti na person me share ECG for mu mission no and no mu vision ma hwe as against their performance.
Right.
Only time year start project 2012. 2012 na me yes our project no. She NC. In fact, the other second project I me was on ECG. Now only them here on no message bibi e friend balance scorecard. You can balance scorecard. You be catch you say first no you can say company aya dia na ese wenye sika bibri.
Right.
But Kaplan any Norton, Dr. Kaplan any Dr. Norton.
Right.
Omu na keka bom hu say you can say company bia ye and yet just because of money nkwa.
Sure.
Nemum bako apart from financial performance no the second one bibi e friend no internal business processes.
Okay.
Internal business processes in there e kwan omu fa so ye omu nioma oti ase say bia container ne ba wan ne be kwa kofa container no ne ye de akohene ana say bia mechanic sa me kwa ana me wo problem with ECG na me fra e kwan be so ne fa so internal business process and also me hwe sa de no ECG ne enkoyi. The third one a customer service delivery. Into Dr. Kaplan and nothing say enye sika no kwase beka say oh ECG enye sika
sure
na emom ekwa mu fa so ye omu nioma omu customer service
see satisfied
now nim dia omu moto ECG no moto
omuzin
delighting in the customer is our ultimate goal now in quality management in quality management no see a catch them say delighting na unim delighting even woko marketing management ye free bibi perception oti ase
sure
and actuals enti perception here perception as against expectation
right
and ye dia hwese nipa no satisfied enti akokwa ebia wahu na jantwa
sure
mi wosika unim se mo sika pa enti anya bia me no di nkomo wi a wo be expect say me ma usika
sure
anya bia se me ma ebia me ne kwa me despite se me fra wo se brafie ne edi nkoma anya bia wonim se awie a me ma ska ma wo kra de ebi kra wo 2000 bi de me de be ma wo
enti de mimi hu ni se be ma koma ato me yemu a me hwehwe free wo no
de wo akoma mu no se bia
menya free wo
at least 2000 bi ba me wie anam so je 500 bi what it means is that the nation will trim the mimi susu se wo hia no wani anje
ebo ebra
enti o say if expectation the me expecting is greater than perception there what the man me na I'll be dissatisfied
sure
nemo me yemfa ni se na nka wo hia 2000 wo expect 2000 but I am so akokwa age 5000 bi abroso
e de ni je beba
what it means is that yes perception is lesser than expectation that's what I expected Me, it was less. Me expected 2,000. No. Your friend is say you are delighted. You are delighted. It's just say the na wani na so no when ya broso. It's ECG kase delighting in our customer is our ultimate goal. It's just say sensu to ECG dum so ni ho. Technical challenges ni ho. Omuye omunyo ye said the beya sa nyoma no eni ho. Eni ne ka say delighting in our customer is our ultimate goal. Sa nyoma we no ye. Enti doctor can say baako performance internal customer service. The last 1 year innovation and learning. Say nipa no I was say do be omusua de ehu the best practices. Ya tena ho agi atum container ba yesi ye wia. Na ye guso ka ho asem debate na po ho no ne energy minister Dubik wo ho no ye former ECG boss ye wo procurement director omu nyina wo ho be pim ne ye da so toto papa so
and I was disappointed in Afenyo board chairman ese e wo ho da
na nka this time kwa I was saying ka Afenyo market ya che no enye e frɛ no ya che no because a board chairman say we in board system now corporate governance now we see we want to mean bibia without boss approval. Into procurement no a board. Procurement na timi come here tue sika wo bra adwuma ni nyam maye no. Afenyo Markins. Na on ne sign. Into yentimi nya nkrata.
Right.
And into na dan na bia gu jeje so no. Wrapping up jeje so no. John Jinapo, this is a simple issue me wa.
Yeah.
Into we ni dede ni say. So far wo ya de no ye hu so wo de ko. But I am not satisfied.
Just
unless Afenyo Napo ECG procurement director technical directors no unya nipa sa 5 we ya ebe timi nya solutions bra no.
We've been joined by the minister,
right?
The minister in charge of energy and green transition, John Jinapo, is joining us right now on Zoom for some further exclusive detail to this matter. Mr. Jinapo, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Is my sound okay?
It's better. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, let me stay on you a bit. How far back did the investigation by the committee reveal as to how long this thing has been going on? I mean, the containers not being accounted for, and as Senor mentioned, auctioning of containers. Because he says when he was serving on this advisory board of the energy ministry, the ECG at the time said, based on his own information, this thing started as far back as 2022. But is that consistent with what the committee found in their investigation?
Thank you very much. First of all, maybe from what is happening, I should have broadened the scope of the committee. I didn't even know these containers were missing. My main focus was, first at the transition, I was given a figure of 3,000 containers. Then on the 17th, I was sworn in. On the 24th, I visited the harbour myself to see for myself the status of these containers. When I went there, I was given another figure of 2,500. So I got a bit alarmed. I said, why 3,000, why 2,500? So I believed the president, and we thought that we should set up a committee to look into the matter and advise us on how to clear them. My main focus was how can we get these containers out of the port quickly, because they had incurred demurrage of about 1.5 billion. You know, demurrage keeps compounding. And so I asked them what happens eventually. I was told that sometimes GAPOA attempts to auction the containers. And so my primary focus was how do we get the containers out quickly so we can save cost. Only for the committee to come and tell me that, look, contrary to the 2,500 you were given, 1,346 containers cannot be accounted for. On ECG's books or documents, they have 2,500 thereabouts. But when we went there to do a detailed count, of the containers, they realized that a lot of them were not available. So that was the scope of the committee. And so I agree with Senyor's suggestion that this should just be a starting point. Now we have to get into the details. And also they took the opportunity to look at the procurement structure of ECG. That is where they realized that, for instance, in 2022, and that answers your question, the system began to decay, particularly from 2022. Because if you look at 2022, and you look at the value of procurement, then you realize that they began to deviate. Then by 2023, their planned procurement, and normally plan means that that's what the board has approved, was 935 million Ghana cedi, almost $1 billion. But by the end of the year, 2023, they had procured 8.3 billion. So they procured about 7.4 billion more than had been approved. And the 1 billion was approved because of their revenue streams. So when you shoot the procurement by 7.3 billion, the containers will come and they'll get stuck at the port because you don't have the money to clear them. But that did not stop there. One would have thought that, having experienced that, in the next year, the board would have insisted that they stick to their procurement plan and also put together a plan to clear those containers. And if you look at page 13 of the report, 2024, their approved budget was 1.397 billion. By the end of the year, their procurement was 8.2 billion. So if you put 2023 and 2024 together, just these 2 years, they procured more than 14 billion what their budget could accommodate. That is the source of all these problems.
More than 14 billion.
More than 14 billion.
CDs.
In 2 years. CDs. Over the 2 years, their procurement should have been less than 2.6 billion thereabout. But they shot it by 14 billion. And the unfortunate thing is, the containers get to the port. The containers contains cables. ECG is unable to clear the containers, and yet they are ordering more of the same cables. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all. Because you have containers stuck at the port. They contain aluminum cables. You claim you don't have money to clear those cables, and yet you are placing orders for more of the same aluminum cables. And that is why they end up with some factories. These factories then melt these brand new aluminum cables into aluminum rods, export them to China, and they convert those rods into aluminum cables again. And ECG then orders those same aluminum cables again back into the country. They are unable to clear them, and they get back to this factory. And so it's been a syndicate. It's like a cartel that has been operating. And so it's good that this has come up. And I'm happy that all of us are discussing these issues. The issue of invitation of the MD and all those would follow now. In fact, what the committee did was basically to look at the reports and to reconcile a lot of the documentation. Now that this report is out, and we've written to the investigative agencies and the law enforcement agencies, I'm sure that the former MD, current executives, everybody would be given a fair hearing and a fair opportunity. For instance, if the procurement is more than 7 billion in 2023, you'll be asked questions. Why did you procure over and above? What was the mandate? What was the rationale? And all that would involve that. Then these containers, I do know that they have serial numbers. They are received at the port. There's a manifest. There's customs. There's GAPOA. And all of them are cooperating so far. So you need a team to go in detail and do a forensic analysis and trace the numbers. When were they received? Who signed off the containers? Who took charge of the containers? Were they delivered to ECG? Is it because maybe there's some poor records? We need to investigate all of that so that we'll get to the bottom of it. And also internally, we need to restructure ECG. Decouple the procurement unit from the estates unit and put the qualified procurement personnel. And that is where I thought, my good friends, Afenyo, let's take a second look at it, because if you don't get a qualified person to man the procurement, he wouldn't appreciate a lot of these issues, and you're going to have these lapses. The MD's mandate, he has a mandate where he can give a contract of below $1 million. And so a day he can decide to sign 15 contracts, 900, 900, 900. We must look at that again and tighten it further so that we can see what is happening. And even the agents that they contracted, some of them are not registered clearing agents. They are not registered, so they take the contract and then go and give it to a third party. And so even in terms of checks and balances and accountability, it becomes a major problem. But so far, the arrests we've made and the information available indicates that 2022, 2023, 2024, it was very, very pervasive. And those are the areas or the years that we are focusing on.
And well, then that's consistent with what Senor indicated earlier. And I started with him because he served on the advisory board of the Ministry of Energy between 2020, 2022. That's the first part of during Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo's administration.
I've been on the Ministry Advisory Board, I think, from 2014 to 2022.
I see. No, yeah. That's a long period. I mean, that's about what, 8 years?
He's right. Yes. And you see, the report clearly shows the years. So, for instance, if you take 2022, if you look at their procurement, single source 33, board approval 0.
0.
So what it means is that the whole of 2022, and you can check from page 12, you see the table. The table below explains the excessive use of single source procurement as opposed to more competitive methods. Of the 142 contracts awarded, 0 went to the board for approval. But when it goes to the board, then you have a 9-member team that would evaluate it. Then 2023, 703 contracts were awarded. Only 21 went to the board. Then 2024, 601 contracts were awarded. Only 7 went to the board. 425 single source. So clearly, it tells you that that's where the problem is coming from.
But help me understand this, because if you're talking about this number of contracts awarded and just a fraction of it goes to the board. I mean, 703, only 21 goes to the board. 601, only 7 goes to the board. Who awards these contracts, and how are they executed, for instance, without the MD's notice, or as it were, he also notifying the board?
The MD who awards the contracts. The MD. The MD awards the contract.
So in this instance, he fails to notify the board?
No. You see, there are 2 ways. You take the contract to the board for approval before you even execute it.
Right.
Or you execute it based on the limit. And like I said, he has a limit of $1 million. So he can choose to sign off every day 10 contracts or 5 contracts within that threshold. And so by the end of the year, you have a lot of contracts, but all these contracts would not go to the board. But then there will be a report to the board. And I thought the board would then have insisted from 2022 that, look, no, how come in 2022 we didn't have the opportunity to approve these contracts? 2023 will not allow it. 2024 will not allow it. And so, for instance, this year, 2025, the norm should be that as much as possible, they have to go to the board. It's only under emergency circumstances that the MD usually would exercise that authority or mandate. But now it's become the norm rather than the exception. And as you can see from the figures, these are some of the systemic failures that we have to correct immediately.
I asked this question because Senior had earlier made reference to what the former MD, Samuel Dubik Mahama, is reported to have said, that he wasn't aware of some of these happenings and the details of it. You said he
was not
aware.
No, he was not invited to the committee. That's all.
Yes, but I'm quoting what you said.
No. Aware that he's signing the contract. He signs the contract. Who else signs the contract? None of these contracts have been done without the visibility of the MD. Nobody goes around and signs up to $1 million. Who has the mandate? He's the one who has it. He's raised issues about auctioning. He's not aware of the auctioning. And that's, maybe it's the auctioning
so
also.
That's all. That's the auctioning. So I just wanted, because you indicated
the contract is the contract is the one doing it.
Yes, because
it's the auctioning that he's raised issues with.
But in 2022, you questioned him.
Yes.
Why that was being done.